Good day, everyone. Today I will explain photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is the process by which green plants, algae, and some bacteria convert light energy from the sun into chemical energy. This important process mainly takes place in the chloroplast of plant cell. It is divided into two stages, the light-dependent reaction and the light-independent reaction, also known as the Calvin cycle. In the light-independent reaction, sunlight is absorbed by chlorophyll to produce ATP and NADPH, while water molecules are split to release oxygen. While the Calvin cycle, carbon dioxide is combined with ATP and NADPH to produce glucose, which plants use as foods. This glucose provides energy not only plants but also the other living things. In short, photosynthesis is important because it gives us both food and oxygen because making life on Earth possible.
Good day everyone. Today I'll be discussing the photosynthesis, focusing on its creation and the first stage, the light-dependent reaction. To help us understand, let's look at this diagram of the chloroplast. The general equation of photosynthesis, the overall equation of photosynthesis is 6CO2 plus 6H2 plus light energy 2 equals the 6C6H12O6 plus 6O2. This means that the plants use carbon dioxide and water with the help of the sunlight to produce glucose, which serves as food, and oxygen, which is released into the air. If we look at this diagram, the diagram of the chloroplast, you'll see that the photosynthesis happened in two main stages. First is the light reaction, this occurs in the thylakoid membranes. So first is the light reaction. Light energy is absorbed to split water molecules. So see, light energy is nag-absorb to split the water molecules inside the chloroplast. Second, oxygen, the O2, is released as byproduct. The process produces ATP and NADPH that shown moving toward the Calvin cycle. Second, Calvin cycle, this takes place in the stroma. Carbon dioxide or the CO2 enters this cycle. Yan na nga siya na cycle. So kaya na nga siya. The ATP and NADPH produced earlier to provide energy and electrons. And the end product is CH2O or the sugar. Also, I think it is called also as glucose, which the plants uses for growth and energy. To make it clear, the ATP or the adenosine triphosphate is like the energy currency that powers the process, and the NADPH carries the electrons and hydrogen needed to build glucose. So, the ATP is the energy and the NADPH is the building materials, the supplier of building materials. To sum up everything, the light-dependent reaction captures sunlight and produces ATP and NADPH. So si light-dependent reaction nag-capture ng sunlight and nag-produce ng energy and electrons and hydrogen while releasing it through oxygen. These are then used in the Calvin cycle to turn the carbon dioxide into sugar, With the help of this diagram, we can see how the two stages are connected inside the chloroplast. And I will be presenting a short video how the light-dependent reaction works and also the stage 1. So that's all, and thank you. Bye!
In photosynthesis, light is used to make organic compounds, especially sugars, in plants. This is extremely important for virtually all life on Earth, because these organic compounds are what we, and our food, are all made of. So how does this process work? In short, when light strikes a leaf, this light is absorbed and the light energy is used to drive a series of chemical reactions that ultimately make sugars and other organic molecules. Overall, carbon dioxide and water are taken in by the plant and used to make glucose and oxygen gas. Photosynthesis can be divided into two sets of reactions. 1, the light-dependent reactions, and 2, the Calvin cycle. The light-dependent reactions, as you might have guessed, depend on light. To understand how these work, let's zoom in on a leaf so we can see them happen. Leaves are made of plant cells, and inside of these cells are special organelles called chloroplasts that do photosynthesis. Each chloroplast has many discs called thylakoids with pigments, like chlorophyll, that absorb light. Think of thylakoids as solar panels in the chloroplast. They absorb the light energy from the sun. Now let's zoom in on the thylakoid and focus on the thylakoid membrane. This is where pigments such as chlorophyll are found and is where light gets absorbed. The pigments are arranged in clusters called photosystems. Let's start with photosystem 2. When photosystem 2 absorbs light, electrons in chlorophyll gain energy, or get excited, from the light. These excited electrons leave chlorophyll and move to something called an electron transport chain. But since chlorophyll lost those electrons, they need to be replaced. To replace them, water is split and its electrons go to chlorophyll. When water is split, electrons, hydrogen ions, and oxygen are produced. You probably know that plants make oxygen when they do photosynthesis. This is where that oxygen comes from. Now, back to the electron transport chain. The electron transport chain transports electrons. As it does, the energy in the electrons is used to pump hydrogen ions, or protons, across the thylakoid membrane into the thylakoid. This creates a high concentration of hydrogen ions inside the thylakoid. These ions would be trapped inside the thylakoid, but a special enzyme called ATP synthase allows them to passively diffuse from high to low concentration. This flow of hydrogen ions through ATP synthase causes ATP synthase to spin and produce ATP, similar to how water flowing through a turbine produces power at a hydroelectric dam. This ATP is a key product of the light-dependent reactions. When the electrons reach the end of this first electron transport chain, they go to photosystem 1, where light excites them once again. They travel down a second, shorter electron transport chain, where they are accepted by a molecule called NADP+. When it accepts the electrons, it also accepts hydrogen and becomes NADPH. NADPH is an electron carrier and is another key product of the light-dependent reactions. It carries electrons and hydrogens to the next set of reactions in photosynthesis, the Calvin cycle. Both ATP and NADPH are critical products of the light-dependent reactions that are needed to make sugar in the Calvin cycle, which we will examine in our next video. If you'd like to try the light-dependent reactions yourself, check out the link for the Photosynthesis Interactive at Bioman Biology, and don't forget to subscribe if you'd like to be notified when I release new videos.
Stage 2, Calvin cycle. The Calvin cycle takes place in the stroma of the chloroplast. So what is stroma? The stroma is like the workshop of the chloroplast, where the Calvin cycle can use energy and enzyme to turn carbon dioxide into sugar. Calvin cycle use ATP and NADPH from the light-dependent reaction. So what is ATP? ATP gives energy. And what is NADPH?
NADPH provide the power to build food like glucose for the plant. Calvin cycle fixes carbon dioxide to produce the glucose and other carbohydrates. Plants grab carbon dioxide from the air and turn it into sugar, which they can use for energy and survival. Calvin cycle does not directly require light but depends on products of the light reaction. So the Calvin cycle can run without light, but it depends on the energy made from sunlight in the first stage. Thank you. So, kanang picture nga sa taas is amayon ang Calvin cycle. So, stage 1 is carbon fixation. So, carbon dioxide combines with RUBP using the enzyme Brevesco. Stage 2 is reduction. ATP and NADPH provide energy to change the molecules into G3P. So, ang stage 3 is regeneration. Most G3P is used to rebuild RUBP, while some is used to form glucose, the plant food. So, amo yaon siya. Yung picture.
The leaves of this plant have cells that carry out photosynthesis. If we zoom in on this photosynthetic plant cell, we can see the chloroplast, where the reactions of photosynthesis occur. Photosynthesis consists of two primary steps, the light reactions and the Calvin cycle reactions. In this tutorial, we'll focus exclusively on the Calvin cycle reactions. The overall purpose of the Calvin cycle is to convert carbon dioxide from the atmosphere into carbohydrates, or sugars, which the plant needs to power its cellular activities and build new plant structures. The Calvin cycle reactions occur within the stroma of the chloroplast. The reactions use the ATP and NADPH produced by the light reactions to convert the CO2 to carbohydrate. Let's zoom into the Calvin cycle to take a closer look. The Calvin cycle could be divided into three phases: carbon dioxide fixation, carbon dioxide reduction, and regeneration of RUBP. The first phase, carbon dioxide fixation, basically captures the CO2 from the atmosphere so it can be used in the reactions. To do this, CO2 is attached to RUBP, a 5-carbon molecule. The enzyme used in this reaction is called Ribisco, and the result of the reaction is an unstable 6-carbon molecule that quickly splits into two 3-carbon molecules called 3-phosphoglycerate, or 3PG. Next, the process of converting the CO2 to carbohydrate begins. This phase is called the carbon dioxide reduction phase because we're adding electrons and energy to the CO2 molecule. During this phase, a sequence of reactions uses NADPH and some of the ATP from the light reactions. These molecules supply the needed electrons and energy for CO2 reduction. Electrons are added from NADPH, and through a series of reactions, 3PG is reduced to form G3P, a carbohydrate. ADP and NADP+ return to the thylakoids to be converted back to ATP and NADPH by the light reactions. One of the G3P molecules is set aside to be used as a building block for glucose, but the majority of the G3P molecules move forward into the third phase of the Calvin cycle. In this phase, ATP is used to combine the rest of the G3P molecules to form RUBP molecules. This RUBP can then combine with additional carbon dioxide molecules, continuing the carbon reactions. To form a glucose molecule, the cycle actually has to turn 6 times, because each turn of the cycle adds only one carbon atom from the incoming carbon dioxide. It's important to remember that the Calvin cycle is dependent on the light reactions to provide NADPH and ATP, which in turn provide the electrons and energy needed to form carbohydrates.